Hey, what's up guys and welcome back to askNK. This is how I decided to burn my RTX 5000 while trying to prove Unreal Engine NANITE wrong. So Unreal Engine 5 came out and everyone was quite excited about it. You know, there was a whole lot of rave and everyone was just hyped up. It was really interesting to see that there is now a revolutionary tool that everyone can lay hands on. With the whole early access thing, it was perfect. I downloaded a copy, tested it out, got the sample file, tested it out, extremely beautiful. And to think about it, that there is something like this that is now available for artists to work with was super nice. Now, it actually became more interesting for me trying to check out how NANITE would work with other meshes, because all the meshes we've tested out was either coming from Megascan, you know, Pixel, or it was existing within the Unreal ecosystem. So what we decided to do is go over to ZBrush, grab a model that I was sculpting sometime. Now, one thing to keep in mind is this mesh is extremely heavy. It is 4 point something million vertices, points, you know, edges, all that stuff. It's 4 point something million. And to put things in context, if you bring a model that heavy over to your DCC app, in this case we are looking at Maya, you would notice that the vertex count is so much that it is just one color. You actually have to zoom right in for you to even see the individual polygons that makes this model. And that is how heavy this is. And in traditional means of working with things, you actually need to go in and do a retopology just to get the mesh to be something usable for your DCC app. And this applies across the board for gaming, VR, AR, you know, animation. This is something that everyone has to do. And now with NANITE here, there is something to prove. There is something to prove the fact that you can bring in your models from ZBrush, your photogrammetry stuff, the things that you just decided to sculpt out of your own imagination, as heavy as they are, direct film quality source art, and throw them directly into Unreal Engine and work with it. And the goal was to prove NANITE wrong. It was not really to prove NANITE wrong to say, but the goal was to see how much triangles, how much stuff NANITE was going to be able to handle, how much points was this going to be able to handle. So our original idea was to get 1 trillion points. This was the original goal. So we decided to bring this directly into Unreal Engine, you know, open it up. Splash screen is wonderful, UI great. Threw this thing in there and we started making copies. Now we went ahead to make copies and copies and copies, and the minute we got about, you know, 1 billion, our PC started throttling. It wasn't really throttling that much, but when we started pushing the bounds, it began to throttle. The more copies we made, the slower the performance became, the slower it was for you to zoom in, frame rate was dropping. Turned on the task manager and saw that my proudly talked about RTX 5000 was literally crying for help. It needed me to stop. You know, it was sort of begging me to quit. And at that point, I felt maybe NANITE doesn't work. Maybe the whole hype is just some marketing campaign. Maybe it only works for things that you can build with Unreal Engine. Maybe it's just the whole thing that this thing, maybe there's just something. And yes, there is. There is actually something with NANITE that most people don't know. This thing doesn't just work automatically. So how NANITE work is this, that NANITE itself is something you have to turn on. If you're opening Unreal Engine for the very first time, Unreal Engine 5, the early access or the final one, and you choose to make replications, you are continually going to be using all of the engine powers of Unreal Engine 4. There is nothing different with this. So for you to make your mesh become NANITE enabled, you need to make sure that you have that mesh selected within your content browser, and then you need to activate NANITE. You need to make it enable. You can choose to enable this when importing your model, or you can choose to enable this once the model is imported. Now what happens is during the importing, the mesh are analyzed and broken down into hierarchy clusters of triangular groups, and during rendering these clusters are swapped on the fly based on the variation or the number of details that the camera would see at a given point. So it simply makes that visualization modes can be used to inspect how your NANITE should look like depending on what and how much meshes that you're throwing into your scene. So this is basically how the whole NANITE thing works. works. So at the point where we figured out that, okay, this is how you should work with it, we turned this thing on, went over, double clicked the model, went to the properties section, turned on all the necessary things that you need to turn on. And in this case, for you to get these things working, once you open up the file, you need to go over to your NANITE setting, make sure that it's enabled, go over to NANITE, enable it as well. All the necessary checkboxes that deals with NANITE, you have to enable it. If you also go over to your details, go to the settings, you need to enable it. All right, so once these things are all done and ready, you can now preview your NANITE proxy. And to preview your NANITE proxy, you need to go over to show within your object inspection, go over to show, click on NANITE proxy, and you'll be able to see what the proxy would look like. And these are the proxies that would be used to replicate things across various parts or across the scene when the camera isn't in focus. So we've already talked about the idea that there is a whole new technology that the folks at Epic Games have created within Unreal Engine that makes it very okay for you to have heavy worlds, and once a character is moving towards a particular place, that only the proxies or only the meshes within that person's radius gets to be rendered. And that is also the same thing that happens here. So what comes too close to the camera is what gets rendered. Things behind the camera works with the proxy, and you can see that with the proxy that we have here, that it is not so heavy. It has a representation of the model for sure, but it is not that heavy. And with that, you can now copy things and paste as much as you want. So for this goal, we decided to go in and start pushing the bounds of what we have. So pushing this and pushing this, we got to 1 billion. We moved from 1 billion to 200 billion. And at this point, when we went back to take a look at our GPU, the GPU was performing okay. So it was so okay to the point that we knew that with something like this, you can get it wrong. So in case you're thinking about creating multiple meshes, you're thinking about bringing all your meshes from ZBrush with 10 million polygons, and you're thinking, can NANITE actually handle this? Of course it can. So we made about 5,000 more copies, I can't remember. So we made a whole lot of copies, and this was super crazy. And by the way, you can also choose to check out how the clusters work and how the computer recognizes it. And also you can choose to see how the triangulation works. You can turn these things on, see how these things work based off performance, and you can get some very wonderful results with it. So by pushing all these things all the way up with the number of points that we have, we were destined to get 1 trillion. We pushed as much as we can, and up to a point I just had to give up. I had to give up not because NANITE wasn't able to handle it. I had to give up because at the point I knew that it was just me spending so much time trying to prove something that was already awesome wrong. So in case you're thinking about something like this, NANITE does it perfectly fine, and you can go in and check it out. But the question's still there. Thinking about how will this compensate for AR, because for AR you also have to do some retopology. You can't really throw in this heavy mesh in there. For games, for PCs, I know that's going to be possible. For visualization, architectural stuff, I know that's going to be possible. But then how does this compensate for AR? And I think, how does this compensate for some other medium of media entertainment? So this is something that I'm thinking about right now, and I don't know if anyone has an idea about it. You can put it in the comment section and we can have a conversation about it. And at the same time, for those who are thinking about, okay, NANITE is here, we can choose to build on learning several things. I think for the most part, this is like the best time for you to start learning things. I think this is more like the best time in all of the times for you to learn how to sculpt, how to texture, how to do your retopology, and how to animate stuff. This is more like the best time. Not everyone would use Unreal Engine, not everyone would want to use the whole NANITE thing, and not everyone would want to rely on if these things actually work and if they want to integrate it in their workflow. There's still going to be animators in Blender, there's still going to be animators in Maya, there's still going to be animators in several DCC apps, and this is something that I think you need to think about. You need to consider this. As well as NANITE is here, you still need all of the skill set that it seems to be trying to eliminate to get up and also get ahead in whatever thing you're doing. And for those who be asking questions, what happened to your CPU? NANITE actually doesn't take advantage of your CPU since it is 100% GPU driven. So just in case you're wondering, can you test out NANITE? You need to confirm if your GPU is good enough for you to get up and running with it. So this is more like it. Tell me what you guys think about this one in the comment section. If you would like to read more about the documentation about NANITE, you want to see how it works, link is going to be in the description where you can check it out. If you guys want me to do a simple walkthrough on how I sculpted the model which we used in testing out NANITE, you can also tell me about that in the comment section, and I'll do my best to share some tips and tricks about ZBrush, and that's about it. If you like this video or you learned something from this, you can go ahead and give it a like, and don't forget to share with a friend. And if you're new here, it's going to be amazing for you to hit the subscribe button and also turn on notifications so that you don't miss next video or the next update. And until I see you guys again with a tutorial update, Free Friday, Tutorial Tuesday, tips and tricks, things like this. Peace.